Microphone reminder, please ensure your microphone is activated each time you speak to maintain clarity for the record and those joining us remotely and for everyone here in the room. The invocation today will be provided by the church at Grace Point Pastor Rusby Asbel. Report and then the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Cindy Slater. Please stand.
Thank you. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, what an opportunity it is that you've given us this very day, led by your Holy Spirit, to be at a time and a place just like this. Lord, we are a blessed city and a blessed county, a blessed state and a blessed nation. And I thank you for that. But as we take steps today, Father, may we acknowledge you in all things, personally in our own lives and our families, Father, in how we stand and sit and speak here. Lord Jesus, help us to do our very best to honor you with all words and actions, Father, so we can give you that glory today and forevermore. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the mayor for the report from the county mayor, Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. A couple of things for you today that may be a little bit lengthy, but first I'd like to call on, we have Sam Said and Stacy Willoughby here from the Development District to talk about CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, and to hold a public hearing, which is the first step in the next grant application that we're going through. Stacy? Okay, a handout is coming around that talks about some of the same things that she'll be telling you also.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me and Sam today. We are excited to talk to you about the Community Development Block Grant. As you can see in front of you, there is a handout sheet. Pretty much what this handout sheet is telling you what all of the eligible activities are for a Community Development Block Grant. I don't want to read through everything because you have that in front of you, so I'm just going to give you a couple of different things that are really important for you to know. The Community Development Block Grant comes from Housing and Urban Development. Usually, the state of Tennessee gets about $26 to $27 million a year, where the state of Tennessee will set up a competitive round of grants where communities can submit applications. So that's what we wanted to talk to you about today. So we are currently starting the 2026 application process for all of our communities. And we got a chance to talk to Mayor Davis and just talk to you about some possibilities that we could have for you going forward. So if you want to kind of look through what some eligible activities are for CDBG, they're kind of high level, but just wanting to kind of look at each one of them real quick. The first one is public health and safety. So that requires some sort of, usually like fire equipment or EMA. Currently right now, one of the things that we're looking for in the region is an emergency command operations center. So we're looking for that for an application. So just to give you a little idea of what that could be. The next one is community infrastructure. It's exactly what it sounds like. Improving grants or improving streets, flood mitigation, things like that. The second one is community revitalization. This is a huge eligible activity right now for applications. This is the one that we're looking at parks, like local parks, anything that would revitalize the community, bring people in. And this is one that we're actually looking for hopefully for Bradley County to turf your football field. And so this is going to be the activity that we were really looking for possibly for this application, and so wanted to bring that before you. And then lastly, 3 through 5 are your water and sewer infrastructure projects. These are really kind of the bread and butter of CDBG. That was actually the last CDBG regular round that Bradley County had. It was a sewer line extension with Ocoee Utility District in 2019. And we were able to close that out, and it was successful. So the last couple things just for you to know about a CDBG. there are 3 national objectives that you have to hit for you to be competitive for this application. The first is low to moderate income individuals, so that whatever project that you're doing, that you would serve at least 51% low to moderate income individuals. The second is elimination of slums and blight. So any condemned space, for example, we looked at condemning a space over in Whitwell and mitigating all of the asbestos and everything so that the property would actually be ready for any kind of development. And then 3 is addressing any kind of imminent threat. So to be able to put this application together, we have to actually show that we're going to do one of these 3 national objectives. What's great about what we're looking for hopefully for Bradley County is that if we're turfing a football field or doing parks and recreation, it is a free service to anybody that could come. And so I think that that would actually be something that we would be able to prove and be competitive in an application. And the last big things for you to know is for a community development block grant, we can ask up to $1 million in grant money for construction and non-construction projects. For you to know, there is a local match, and that is 17% for Bradley County. Now, that is not 17% of your grant amount. It is 17% of your total project cost. So people get a little confused. They see $1 million, and they think 17% means 17% of $1 million. It's actually 17% of a total project cost, all right? So just wanting to kind of make sure, I always try to make that as clear as possible. One of the things that we are looking for, if we are to move forward with a possible application for turfing fields, is looking at another funding source along with the Community Development Block Grant, which is called a Local Parks and Rec Grant. I'm going to let Sam kind of speak to that just a little bit so that you guys can understand what those numbers look like.
Sure. And that grant is the TDEC Local Parks and Recreation Grant. That grant is a 50-50 match. So the CDBG grant is allowed to match the LPRF grant and vice versa. That grant, the pre-application is actually due in January 14th, and the full application is due on April 1st. So the pre-application is more of just a letter of intent, but then the full cost and everything with the engineer's stamped estimate is due by April 1st. But we would probably find out about both grants around the same, probably the LPRF we would find out first, then the CDBG. Yeah, that's really the long and short of it, but we're happy to answer any questions.
He's a little taller than me. The last thing I wanted to say, because he did talk about a timeline, is that the CDBG grant is actually due on March 20th of this year. So different timelines, but for the CDBG, that is when the application is due.
Cindy, did you have a question?
So has Parks and Rec applied for both of these grants?
The process has begun. The letter has been sent, which meets that January the 14th deadline.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. You did mention football fields. I want to confirm we're talking about softball and baseball fields, correct?
Baseball fields.
Oh, I'm
turf
sorry.
Baseball, not
fields.
I
football.
misspoke. I'm sorry.
Okay, just want to make sure. The other question that I have, you mentioned here what it says is construction projects up to $1 million, non-constructions up to $1 million.
Yes, sir.
Is that one or the other, or is there $2 million available for grants?
No, it's just
Just
$1
$1
million.
million.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you also mentioned fire trucks and EMA,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't hear you mention EMS. Are they considered EMS or Sheriff's Department? Are they considered in those grants?
Unfortunately, Sheriff's Department, we've not seen them fund anything for the Sheriff's
What about
Department.
emergency medical services,
Yes.
ambulances, those
Mhm.
types of things? Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Mo.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Can it be Mayor, this, I guess, for you, the one that we closed was the Taylor Elementary?
That's correct.
And that was, so that satisfies, I guess, this closing date, so there's nothing there. But can we do a combination of these right here? Like Habitat and City Fields, I believe, meet some of the qualifications for block grants, but also the turf. So we had to pick one or the other, or is it a combination thereof?
We have to pick one eligible activity. You cannot mix the two. So
Is-
in other words, we can't do LPRF and some, like another project.
So Mayor, we were talking about Habitat and City Fields.
The other grant, I don't remember the acronym, but the other grant that we're just waiting on word to proceed on includes Habitat and City Fields.
So that's-
And also the EOC that he mentioned also. Those are covered in previous grant apps that we're just waiting.
That's disaster money. So there are different kinds of community development block grants. This is the regular round application. What Mayor Davis is speaking of is for city fields and acquisition of property, and the EOC is from Bradley County's it's the disaster money from CDBG from 2021. And we're waiting for contracts. It's already been put in, and we're waiting for a contract from the state of Tennessee.
The 17% matching of the total project, I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume, you don't, whoever's awarding this grant doesn't really care where we come up with the 17%, right? If it's HCI money or whatever. So as long as we show that we've got the 17%, is that up front or during the course of the project, or when does that money come into play?
So they're going to ask you to submit a resolution saying that you're going to provide that 17%, but the 17% comes out throughout the process of the grant. So you do have to, in the resolution at the very beginning when we do the application, you have to say that you have access to that 17%.
So Mayor, we would just budget our portion into a line item and pay it accordingly, right?
Right. When they approve reimbursements, they'll leave out 17% of that reimbursement that we have to do. So yes, we'd have to have it budgeted.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Any other questions? Yes.
The disaster money that she's speaking of is from the tornadoes from the East Cleveland area, and that's where the rebuild typically would be in that area, correct?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
That one's got specific areas,
Right.
which they know those areas.
Correct.
It's just they probably are giving up hope on it because it's been 2 years.
Right.
But we're getting closer. The EOC, as you know, has moved to the new location, but the EOC, the war room, as I call it, is still at the old location, waiting on the grant to be able to get to new location.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
And then Habitat and City Fields are just stuck waiting until it gets approved, but hopefully this spring.
Is there a specific one of these that you're actually looking for?
What we're proposing to do this time is put this along with the recreation grant to fund at least a portion of the turfing the baseball fields. Which is, if you've heard me in any of those meetings, I'm wanting to do it in phases. If we do a phase, it's a $5 million project, I believe. If we do it in phases, phase one would be $2 million, and we'd have $3 million left. And I'd hope to fund all, or at least most of the other part with these two grants. So that would be funding. In essence, you'd be talking about Urbane Road, Menace Road, and Blue Springs probably funded with these two grants after we're already working on the one on Eureka. Yes, sir.
If we get these grants, what kind of time frame are we looking at as far as moving them on through the system, you might say?
That's a great question.
Well, I know it, but it's an important question.
It's a great
that
question.
I think would be very critical on
Yes.
what we're looking at here.
Yes, so for the Community Development Block Grant, we'll submit the application March 20th. We wouldn't know about awards until November of this year, of 2026. From there, let's say we get awarded. We're very excited about that. We do have to do an environmental review. Environmental reviews can be up to 120 days. And from there, then we would be working with an architect, possibly a design build, to do plans and specifications, and that could be a possible another 2 or 3 months. So what I would tell you is that you probably wouldn't see any breaking of ground on any of this until summer of 27, just because of how long it takes for the grant process.
Thank you, ma'am. That's very informative.
And that's both grants, I'm assuming, right?
Yes,
Timeline.
sir. Yeah, they would go with the same timeline.
So I know some are, I guess, pushing to move faster, but phase one would occur almost immediately with cash, with borrowing, with you all borrowing. And in phase two, worst case scenario, we would go ahead and do the same thing. But we would still be leaving enough then for 27 to be covered by the grant. And so in a year and a half's time, they would all be done. That's what it amounts to. But to me, it's worth a little bit of slowing down on phase 3, 2, and 3 and 4 to be able to pay for it with the grant, as opposed to paying for it with cash up front or a borrowing up front. Any other questions? There is a sheet that's coming around. This is, she'll tell you, but this is a public hearing. Normally, these public hearings are held in my conference room, but since they were doing it today, I said, why don't you just come to the commission meeting and do it? And then we get signatures and information about people that attend the public hearing. So this sign sheet's coming around, and you can finish it with that, Stacy.
Yes, so thank you so much. And yes, the sign-in sheet, if you'll please sign for me. I also have cards, and Sam has cards if you have questions. But we really appreciate it. Any other questions, we would be happy to answer for you, and we hope to help in whatever way we can.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I had one more question.
Mhm.
If we've applied for these grants, and what if you don't get it? Or how long is it gonna take to find out if we get the grant or not?
It'll be November of 2026 before. Now, the
So-
LPRF, we may know something this summer. LPRF is a little bit quicker, but unfortunately with community development block grants, they wait until October or November of the same year that we submit. So it would be November.
So we have no guarantees until next year, basically.
That's correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have no guarantee until October and November of this year.
Mayor, is this refundable? If we put up the money for it, then we could just be reimbursed on the back end of it, or it has to go through all those steps of engineering, site work, environmental studies, and all those different types of things?
Unfortunately, you have to go through the process.
Perfect, thanks.
Any other questions?
Well, if you don't mind, if they give us the money, if they award us the grant, do they kind of quote unquote pick the engineers or the people who are going to do the work? They handle the bidding, or do they just say, "Here's the money, go forth and do well"?
So Bradley County will be responsible for, we would, how do I put this? So they would require a project administrator. The development district has done that in the past. So that would be something that me and my team would do. In other words, we would help with the procurement of professional services to make sure that we abide by the guidelines by the state. But it would be Bradley County that would choose whoever those professional services are.
The reason why I ask is if, the mayor is proposing to do this in phases, we'll have already a working relationship with the engineers,
Right.
project managers, and all that kind of stuff. But if the state wanted to go a different direction, that would.
No, we would procure services for you, and it's
Yeah.
whoever you decide from
Thank you.
there.
And you might mention you're familiar with the company in Athens.
Yes, so I actually am administering McMinn County's Bicentennial Park turfing of their fields right now. It's actually my project, so I've done it since 2023. Baseline Sports Construction, they have been doing their fields up there. They're going to be doing their phase 2 as well. I will tell you, I think that they're a great company. Steve Cliff has been wonderful to work with and has worked well with the county.
Now, I mention that because that's who we've been talking to, yes.
How long have they been working on this particular project you're talking about now? Getting the grant and the whole 10 yards?
Great question. So they started, so it was a 2023, but they were awarded in that later year. We did the environmental, and they started work. So I'm going to talk about starting work. They started work in fall, late summer, I would say August of 2025, and they were done within 120 days of their turf. So it took about a year for us to get everything that we had to get together, which is very normal. But when they actually got out there, it took them less than 120 days to do all of the improvements.
So it took a year to, once you got the grant, it took a year to get started, you said?
Unfortunately, because we have to go through environmental clearances and we also have to do plans and specifications.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anything else, Stacey, needs to be mentioned? Thank you for
so much.
helping us be a part of this public hearing.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Stacy and Sam, for coming today. Next, I don't know who's heading it up. Is it you, Doug, or Mark? You going to come and introduce?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you. I'm bringing before you today, at the request of the Industrial Development Board, a resolution for your consideration, which would approve policies and procedures relating to the implementation of tax increment financing transactions that may be undertaken by the Industrial Development Board on behalf of the city and/or county. This resolution essentially is drafted to approve policies and procedures which are in your packet for you this month, which are the guidelines by which the Industrial Development Board representing local governments would evaluate and address a request for a tax increment financing package on this. This is a rather lengthy document, so we do understand it takes time to review this, and we've have with us today, in addition to several of our industrial board members. I think that's a reflection of the importance of this request on the part of the board. The main purpose of us asking for this is so that we can prepare to address future project needs that are most likely moving us away from the intensity of industrial development projects that we focused on for the past 20 years as an industrial board. As you know, we're growing as a community. We're now the 10th fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee, according to the University of Tennessee Center for Business and Economic Research. If you look at it as a percentage of annual growth, we are the 6th fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee. With that, we're seeing increasing demands for retail and service activities, as well as a lot of different housing types. And this tax increment financing tool that the state legislature has authorized, I think, can be very helpful to us as a community as we try to package projects that are beneficial to the community as a whole and help advance our overall economic strategy as a community. Here to address any specific questions you may have here on the front end, recognizing that you've probably not read through all these documents, is Mr. Mark Mamontov, who is one of the authors of one of the articles that I've provided you that gives you additional background on this particular program for financing public infrastructure improvements.
Hi, I'm Mark Mamontov. I'm a bond lawyer, as people call me. Like when y'all issue bonds, I help you do the legal work. And so you rarely see somebody like me because when you issue bonds, because usually the financial advisors take care of everything, but I'm in the background pushing the paper. So years ago, I got involved in doing economic incentive work, helping cities and counties do economic development. So if you're wondering why I'm here, I wrote the law that got adopted by the legislature that allowed tax increment financing back in 2004. Industrial Development Board. As a result of that, I started getting asked a lot to come and explain it and help draft a lot of these policies. I work for a big law firm out of Nashville, but I've been here essentially all my life. I live up the road in Knoxville, and so really privileged to come down here today and see you guys. I don't know how much detail you all want. I know you all are just getting this stuff, but I thought it might be helpful just to give you a little bit of overview why you're even doing this. I mean, or being asked to consider this. And I think the most important thing for you all to make sure is important to emphasize to you all is you are not approving any sort of incentive by approving these policies. This is just to provide the process for how you would consider an application. So this is, you're not delegating to the IDB okay, go out and do TIFs and never come see us again. You have to approve every single one. This just gives parameters and provides the process that they would come to you guys. So if a developer shows up and says, which is happening all the time, I mean, we're getting calls all this entire region for TIFs and pilots and special assessment districts and things like that. And so you guys have a great community, good schools. You're going to see these things, and you'll get an application, and like people will say, well, what do I do? How do I ask? And this is the process for how do you ask for an incentive. And it sets certain parameters. It tries to provide some protections to the city and the county for considering these things. And so this is what I like to call a process document. When we were working on some of the laws and revisiting them, and about 10 years ago, we specifically added something that said that you all could adopt policy and procedure with your industrial development board on how you would consider and administer tax increment incentives, tax increment financing. And so these policies are what has been authorized by state law that gives you all the ability to do this. You don't have to do it. It's not legally required. It just provides a much more coherent way to consider when typically a developer shows up and says, I'd like to be considered for tax increment financing. And so I'm glad to go through some of the details. I was just going to hit a few of the highlights, but that is probably the biggest highlight is that, again, this is a process document, not an authorization document to do a specific deal. And so, the process that is adopted here is very similar to has been used. This form provided a number of forms from across the state to Doug and other folks that were working on this, and they picked and choose. Said, hey, I like that provision. I like that provision. This is a good fit for Bradley County, and so this is sort of but it's very similar in many ways to what a lot of other communities have adopted. I'd say probably 25 to 30 counties across the state have adopted policies like this. I just helped Chattanooga update theirs recently, and they're a lot answering questions about TIF policies for them. But these, if someone shows up and says, hey, I can't do my deal unless I get help with some of the infrastructure, is what usually happens using a tax increment financing. They would file an application with the IDB. The IDB sets up a special committee to review it. They recommend whether it even moves forward and whether it makes sense. A big point in these documents is in this process is often there are two issues that you all will want to consider if you're going to consider any sort of incentive for a development. One is, does this make sense economically? Do we get more out of this deal? Is the economic impact on our community worth us giving up a portion of our tax increment to do this? And then secondly, would the developer do it anyway? I mean, I love developers, work with them all the time, but developers are not shy to ask for incentives. And so this gives you all the opportunity to say, no, we want to get someone independent to really look at your numbers, what we call the but-for analysis, to see whether you need that incentive for this project. Don't just ask us because you think you might get it. We need to really analyze it to see if this incentive is. Again, I want to emphasize tax increment, and I call them incentives because a lot of these are not. Financing often does occur, but sometimes it's just a reimbursement of public infrastructure. What it is, and I should have started just to remind you all, though I'm sure many of you all know this is not a pilot. This is no abatement of taxes whatsoever. They pay taxes just like they normally do with a tax increment. It's just a reallocation of the taxes once they come into your county trustee. A portion of them would go to the industrial development. And it's only out of the growth. It's not out of any of your existing. You will always get your base taxes on any parcel, always receive that parcel the year before any plan is approved. What you give up is a portion of the increment. What these policies suggest, and then you can vote it, hopefully you all would support this, but you can consider it with every deal, is that 80%, a minimum of 80% would go to, a maximum of 80% would go to the developer, essentially to the board to assist with the development. 20% would stay with the county. Same would be true with the city. If for any reason your debt service component of your tax rate, which I don't think would be the case, ever exceeds 20%, you would actually get more. you have to keep the debt service. I don't know, Mayor, I think you're well below 20% would be my guess, but it is, 'cause I know you've been very prudent in borrowing. And so that's one of the limitations there. So you got the process, you start with the board, developer asks for incentive, they go through the various committees, it comes then to you all, and so that sort of establishes the process. When you all get a chance to review these, I would especially encourage you all to read, focus on pages 9, at least the draft I have is 9, the policies themselves that set limitations. You have a maximum term of 20 years without state comptroller approval. That's what state law provides, so that's just consistent with state law. It has the 80% limit in there I was just talking about. You legally can give up everything above the base taxes. You could give everything away except for your debt service component. Here you hold back 20% no matter what, even if your debt service component is less than that. We have a minimum project size of $25 million, unless it's a downtown, essentially redevelopment project. It could be a little bit smaller. And you can't use the TIF to pay more than 20% of the cost of the development. That is what I call a skin in the game sort of provision to say, now, wait a minute, the developer needs to be paying the vast majority of the cost of the project. So you have a cap there. It talks about what's eligible under state law that you can use the increment to pay. The way these work for large multi-use developments is those developments usually take many years to build out. And so you usually give the developer a period of time to finish out, to what I call triggering. That's not a legal term, but basically, like, the increment is not valuable until they build something. You know, the improvements is what creates the increment. So you give them a period of time. This caps it at 5 years. Typically, 5 years is sort of in the sweet spot of what I typically see. I see, like in Montgomery County, I've done some deals. They give people up to 10 years, trigger some deals out west in Jackson. I've seen some 10-year deals. But here, we thought 5 years was a reasonable estimate. It gives 60 days for the trustee to figure out what the increment is that goes to the IDB. State law says it's 30 unless you provide otherwise. This gives the trustee a little bit more time to do the math, because sometimes the math can be quite complicated on a more complicated deal. So this is intended to be a little bit helpful to your trustee. And then it provides for basically the financing to pay certain fees and costs, because Doug's staff will spend quite a bit of time on helping calculate IDB and quite a bit of time with it, as will your trustee, the city recorder, figuring out what the increment is each year after it's up and going. So I'm sort of dove in, and I'm sorry if I'm not covering what you all want. I'd love to, if you all have questions about tax increment financing, what it is, I'm glad to answer it. I teach seminars on this stuff, and some of them go on hours and hours, and I promise you I don't want to do that to you. It's really painful stuff. So.
If I could add, as an industrial board, you've worked with us on pilot here, Bradley County. A pilot, we're essentially going for tax based on the growth of investment, kind of as their cash in. A TIF, like he had mentioned, essentially established here before you place a property, for instance, in a TIF agreement, and the base tax would be the tax paid on that property here, so that any additional taxing value that property received would then be the increment applicable to this agreement. That would then be used for agreed upon expenditures that are made by the developer or finance that would do public infrastructure, talking about roads, water, sewer, other utilities. I think state law even in some instances allows items, public parking garages, specific, they're accessible by the public, park improvement, greenway improvement, so it become part of a public package improvement side development. Things I've mentioned there would be typical to a mixed-use residential commercial development. They also public park. These can be used for industrial development projects, have an isolated private property where we have industrial location that has specific utility needs required those. Mayor standpoint, the board, our discussions today to have a supportive role to the community as we deal with what is becoming more prevalent ask in Bradley County and Charleston. That's mixed use, commercial, retail. Realize that.
And a
We'd
deep
like to point
subject.
out that several of our members Chairman Tarver could not be here today because of a family matter. Did want to extend his appreciation to all the
Questions, Greg? I think Commissioner Blake has one.
You mentioned that this is not like a pilot, and the pilots have been very successful. Can you interchange them, or do they target two different types of industries or economic incentives or whatever?
You do typically see TIFs more with commercial, multi-use commercial development than you do with industry, but as Doug just mentioned, you can use it often to extend utility lines. So it is more typical with more commercial, multi-use development to use tax increment financing. The one takeaway, what I always try to tell people, the main difference between pilot and both of them result in taxes. General is borrow developer front public. This is the way they get to pilot. Can't really monetize value. Yeah, basically.
Right.
That way you get the money. That's why you
But with the pilot, obviously how Doug and the IDB board do the negotiations, they all, and during negotiations, and they finally come with a package to us. They all have their own different flavors, but essentially we give a certain amount of years that they're going to put the money into building and setting up their shop, their operations. But eventually we get the full after that, and I assume that's the case here. But with the pilot, whatever funds we get goes into our full budget. In other words, into our general fund, into our road fund, into debt services, capital projects, schools, what have you. Whereas the increment that you're referring to after you get to the base, right, that's going into, if I understood your document, I assume it has to go into a quote unquote special account or a fund designated for the outside of our general fund, outside of our road department, stuff like that. So in other words, the increase is now tagged just for that debt. It's not going to get, the general fund and the road fund and all these other funds that we have in our budget won't receive the growth money at this point in time.
That's a good question, good point. Let's assume you have parcel property taxes $1,000. $10,000 will go.
Right.
100,000, whatever's needed, whatever portion of that would be debt service, so your debt service excess.
All right, that's a key point. That 20%, it has to go in debt services.
The extent that debt service up to, but my guess is
It's less.
sort of looking at the
Well,
figures, probably
Mhm.
so we have a.
Yeah, we wouldn't need to put all 20 in debt service. I don't recall exactly how much it is, but it's less.
So if we have a healthy fund balance and we've been working on our debt, then we could take that 20% and put it into other funds, the general fund, the roads and stuff like that. That's,
you do not need debt service.
and we're only putting it in there as the underwriter, so to speak, right? And I mean, we're not actually, it's the other 80% of the increment is what's gonna pay, and the 20% is,
Other 80 cents, the special fund you're referencing, that goes into the special fund, not for you all. What happens?
right. Do we have any control, or is there any options of how much of the, like in your example, you went from 10,000 to 110,000. Can we change that? Do we have any, is it an all or nothing kind of thing? In other words, we would like for only 50% of the increase to go. I'm just using numbers here.
That's exactly what I mean. Policies, self-development, max. Also, not binding.
All right.
Parameters. Right now, body. So, state law says taxes.
Right. In your document, you talked about parcel to parcel and aggregate.
Yes.
And it seemed, and I'm just going by your that the aggregate was more favorable than the parcel or it had different, or parcel had different challenges or whatever. And I guess this may be for you, Doug, and when we look at our city, we have parcels, you know, is each parcel its own TIF? That's the part I can't get is.
When you have multi-development, I'm aside from other. Parcel.
I'm not going to I'll send some of my questions to you in writing, Doug, because I know some of the commissioners probably have some questions as well. But that's a good starting point. On the policy piece, that's all this resolution, like you said, that the questions I have are TIF related. I get that. And you kind of already addressed the other one is that I guess you're in version 1.0 with your policy and your email, the IDB board adopted it on December 16th or something like that.
Yes.
And if there's any changes, edits or like that, then that has to come back to the city and to the county.
Yes, if the Industrial Development Board approved the policy you have in front of you, if there are any changes as a result of these reviews and your approvals, then the Industrial Board would have to take that up again and approve that policy again. If there's any substantial change. This policy sets the overall parameters, as Mark has mentioned. Within the context of this policy, you'll see references to an economic impact plan. That's actually where the nuts and bolts of the deal structure come together. The specific properties are laid out and mapped. The uses are mapped. What is going to happen on the property is outlined. The entire project is basically packaged in written format for evaluation by a application review committee, which includes staff and also includes individuals. So as it's structured today, the county mayor would actually, or his designee would serve on that application review committee along with industrial board members and staff and city staff, depending upon whether it's Charleston or Cleveland. We have included Charleston in this.
Yeah, I saw that. But I'll send you, I'll shoot you, get with Lori to send you an email with the rest of my questions, because I don't want to dominate the time, but thank you very much.
And we'd be happy to come to Finance Committee. I'm not sure what the structure is that you'd like to move forward with this review, but if you'd like for it to shift to a review to the Finance Committee for recommendation back to the County Commission, we'd be more than happy to do that any way you want. We haven't done one of these, so this is a new experience for all of us to learn together and to figure out how we want to approach this.
Well, you don't have to answer this, but I did see outside of your documents that there are some risks. We've had some counties, I guess, that entered into, they got themselves, we'll call it, in trouble. I think Knoxville was the one that the CTAS sent me. That so I guess we identified the risk, understanding them a little bit better. But anyway, thank you, Mayor.
There's risk to everything we do.
I know, but we need,
that is for sure.
but we need to know what they are, so that we're not like, okay, if this happens, then this is the beginning of concern, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we just need to identify them. Everybody's on the same sheet of music of what's going on.
Yes. And then, and two during the Great Recession in 2008 went in default when the condos didn't sell. And so, but generally it's still a very active tool, whether it's a good tool or not. That's, everyone has their views, but it's been a very, between pilots and TIFs, I've given, sometimes I do tours of downtown Knoxville explaining to folks what incentives made different, but it's been a very active tool down there. But yeah, I'd be glad to go over any concern. It is important to note that any tax increment financing, the county nor any city puts their credit behind it. It's an allocation. The reason we run these through the IDB is you segregate the credit risk from the county itself, so that you don't have any exposure for non-payment.
Are there any other questions? Anyone else? You'll have time for other questions, but if you want to ask Mark, it'd be good to do it while he's here today. It's sort of like with the. Thank you. We appreciate that. Timeline. We passed out a resolution, but do we need to? Does it need to be requested to be on next week, or could it be the following voting meeting? Or if we shoot for the 5th, that way it could go through finance if you wanted to as a recommendation and come that I say the 5th, whatever the first Monday is in February. I mean, if we you've got the resolution, and I assume they've got the policies and procedures in the white paper. Did that go to everyone? Between the two, if you read it all, it may get you confused like it does me, but it tells you everything there is to know about it. But if we put it on the first meeting then in February, you would have a finance meeting that day that you could recommend if you wanted to. Does that make sense? As I'm sure you're probably, you're indicating to me you're not going to be ready next week. So we put it in the next voting meeting. If someone would do that between now and then, let it be on that first meeting in February.
Has the city already adopted their side of it?
City has not at this point, but I want to ask a question on that, because to me, in talking to everyone, the $2 million question is, what if the city approves it and the county doesn't? Anybody want to speak to that, Mark?
I've seen that. I mean, if these are to be policies for both, if they're existent, obviously everybody would have to approve. If you all, as Doug mentioned, if you all make changes, then it would have to go back to the city and the IDB. If the city makes changes, then it would have to come back to you all. So it's a sort of everybody has to sign up. could you all do your own policies and with the board? Yes. Could the city do separate policies with the board? Yes. Could you do no policies at all and the city could just do policies? The answers to all those questions are yes. They're not as helpful. But I mean, again, if you all want to signal, we just don't want to do this. We don't like this tool and we don't want to participate in it. I'm not suggesting that's what you do, but if you all want to say that we just want to do it, that, by saying we don't want to adopt policies, that's sort of a way of saying that, and then the city can decide whether they just want to do their own policies. But yes, it's perfectly legal for.
So the reason I asked that while he's here, because he answered it much better. So put it on the agenda when you're comfortable. And if it's voted down, then basically they've said, no, they don't want to do it. And he's just told you that that is a possibility. But seriously, if you'll study the information in front of you, send more questions to them, get as familiar with it as you can before you make that, stay open-minded before you make that kind of a decision, because it will help in the future in recruiting various things to our community.
Just clarification, Mayor. This resolution is just IDB, your policy is good to go or not
Right.
good to go. That's
it.
That's
Yes,
all your policy.
You're approving the policies and
But
procedures.
not one single TIF. I mean,
No,
Yeah.
and just like, and I don't want to compare it to pilots, but every single TIF request will go to the IDB and to the city and to the county for approval. Some time ago, many years ago, y'all approved the fact that we want to proceed with pilots. But even though that's in place, they all have to come back to you for approval. So if you approve the policies and procedures, and the city approves the policies and procedures, same ones that they've approved, every time there is a TIF request, it's still got to come back to you all to say yes or no. I'm saying that now while he's here to nod, so,
Mayor,
well, that's all right. Josh, you had a question?
Yeah, just two clarifying points. One to what the mayor just said there was that it would go to the IDB board, then it would go to the city, it would go to the county. Would it have to go to all three municipalities? So it would go to Charleston for approval, Cleveland for approval, and Bradley County, or it would just go to the city
If
it?
Charleston wants to participate as well, their governing body would have to approve as well.
So we would have to have three governing bodies
Yes.
approve the
Yes.
TIF, even if it's not in Charleston.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were just asking about the policies. If if the TIF only affects City of Cleveland taxes or Bradley County taxes, it would only go to those two bodies.
Okay, I just want
Yeah,
clarification.
this
We
is
had
the
an
policy.
issue
Yes,
earlier
yes.
in the year where it had to, all three governing bodies had to agree, and sometimes that's a little bit difficult to
And the
do.
interesting thing, at least in my weird world, is that if also you had a project that's outside the corporate limits of either Charleston or Cleveland, then you could apply these to a county only. It does not have to be in the corporate limits of the city.
Okay. The next question that I have was, you talked about the 80% and the 20%
Yes.
that is in these documents. I would assume our IDB board is the one, Doug, you came up with that. And I guess my question is for you, sir, is that you've done these all over the state of Tennessee. Is that standard for most counties?
That's middle of the road. I'd say the large majority of people have adopted policies just deduct the debt service component and do not do that. They don't take out anything extra. So it's actually more favorable to the city and the county than the typical. But since you all live right here, what Hamilton County does is they just withhold their school portion. So, I mean, easy. I'm not saying anything that's not public record. It just is that's
Sure.
what they do. That makes it, and I would tell Mayor Wamp if he was standing here, is that makes it a little bit tricky. It's easier to do a fixed percentage because then you can do the math easier on a fixed percentage. But it's worked okay with them. Chattanooga, I think, can't remember exactly which percentage, but they did something sort of like what you all have done. But it is, I would say, middle of the road in terms of what I've seen. But I would say more than not,
but
people
more
don't-
favorable to the municipalities.
Yes, more favorable to municipality. Yeah.
I guess I wanted to clarify that, because a lot of people would hear 80-20 and they'd be like, man, the county and the city aren't really getting much. But in these situations, right, that's a more favorable outcome for the municipalities than what is standard across the state.
I try to do very little developer side work anymore because I like representing my cities and counties, which who I usually work for. But if I were a developer standing here, he would say, but it's 20% of what you wouldn't have otherwise if I don't do the deal. So
Sure.
that's what they would say.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, yes.
Okay, just one more. So in your document, you talk also about, excuse me, the housing authority, with the housing authority issuing TIFs or a variation of TIF. And the IDB board also has authority as well. But so what's the differential, I guess, on when the housing authority is used to implement a TIF versus the IDB using it? I mean, obviously, housing authority is about getting people in homes and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, and I was mentioning, I'm sorry, taking so much of your time, but as I mentioned that this statute is actually based on the housing authority statute, which has actually been in the law since the 50s or even maybe before that. And so the housing authority law can only be used in areas where there is blight. And so what we were seeing is that a lot of people are trying to do greenfield development, which is, that there's just a big, large piece of property they want to develop and they need help paying for the public infrastructure, and they couldn't, they weren't eligible for financing through the housing authority because it was blighted. And so housing authorities, the main difference again is you have to have a finding of blight to do a housing authority. I think there's no provision in the housing authority law for policies like these to do what you're being asked to do. That's something that's a little bit unique to IDBs. Housing authorities have a little bit more limit on what they can spend money on. So there's a different of use, that the 20-year limit that's in the IDB statute is not in the housing authority statute. You could go 30 there without any state approval, while here you're limited to 20 without state approval. There's a litany of differences. I think when you're talking about the white paper, I think you've got this article I wrote several years ago. There's been some updates to that the law since then, so they're minor, but that article is still generally accurate, but it somewhat discusses that in there. But it is, I think mainly what you all will see are, you may get more requests through the Cleveland Housing Authority and the thing, but I think you're more likely to see, given that you're in such a growth, large scale development is not what you're typically going to see. The Knoxville kind of ones you mentioned are typically historic standalone buildings where we did TIFs, but here I think you're more likely to see greenfield development.
Okay. Mayor, the housing authority, it's been years since they've come to us, but they haven't done anything like a TIF that I don't know.
I don't think anything's been approved for them to do it. And we're sort of, in my perspective, choosing go the IDB route rather than that. I guess we could probably have both set up, but at least this is only addressing the IDB doing it.
Right. I mean, but this doesn't preclude, I mean, it's not a or kind of thing, right? I mean,
the housing authority could consider and come to you all and say, would you participate?
Not so much for the, I guess, the proposed projects here, but in other words, there's certain parts of Cleveland that need some attention, and the blight word you use. In other words, you can do TIF, housing authority, to work with our friends over there at Cleveland Fields and all that, and these. I mean, you can have multiple TIFs going on.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you definitely can, and it may make sense at one point for them to do one versus for this, but I do think, as the mayor said, it's sort of steering them if there's a choice. Most of the ones that I've seen in communities like Cleveland and Bradley County would be through the IDB.
Any other questions? I know it's been long, but this is an important subject that we'll hopefully be addressing in the very near future. So again, the information that you've been given from Lori, be sure to look through that. It will explain it and get you as confused as the rest of us are if you haven't already read it. I want to mention Mark. I think it was said early on, he's with Bass, Berry and Sims. When you all approve a bond issue and we go to the bond market, you hear Cumberland mentioned a lot. Cumberland's when it comes to our meetings, but Bass, Berry and Sims is provides the bond counsel, and that's what he was referring to early on. So we're used to working with them when it comes time to borrow money. If you all don't have any other questions, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much. We'll now go to reports from committees and our districts. We'll start on our left with Commissioner Rogers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One clarifying point, was that resolution ended up being placed on the finance department or the finance committees?
We'll leave it up to you. We'll send it to finance if you want to do it that way, and
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that that got clarified and handled. I think there were some questions on if it would be sent that way and then to the voting. I just wanted to make sure it was sent your way since it's been passed out. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to report today.
Lori, make sure that we have the finance committee, make it early enough to where we don't interrupt the normal meeting. You're through then, Commissioner Rogers? Okay. Commissioner Ledford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing to report in the 6th District. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Slater?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to report today.
Commissioner Goins?
5th District's doing well. Nothing to report. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman, from 4th District.
Commissioner Gilbert?
Nothing for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason?
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I have today is the TDOT litter grant, December 2025, 794 county road miles, 246 state road miles, 60 miles in the city of Cleveland. Total was 11,760 pounds of trash. Total recycled this month was 1,435 pounds. And special thanks to Thomas Bell, Camille McGill, Gabe Thomas, Rich Kenlin of probation, and all of his guys and gals that makes this program roll. Thank you. That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're doing well on the 3rd. Nothing to report.
Commissioner Blake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, speaking of finance, one of the things needed to say, in the last finance meeting, when we were going over the ARP money, if you remember, that is the $22 million that we received from the feds after COVID. And looking at the interest that it brings in monthly, we budgeted $300,000 in interest in this current budget. And based off of the amount that we're getting per month, it's going to be pretty close, if not under. What I'm basically saying, without saying anything, is ARP money is pretty much done as far as all what we can spend. We may be able to, as I said in the finance, be able to spend $500 here or $1,000 there, but as far as the big projects that we like to do, ARP money has been depleted. And we talked about a little bit about in finance that we've done, I think, a pretty good job. The mayor's done a good job reporting back to the U.S. Treasury and so forth, but based off of what the interest is making, I think it was 17,000. And it was up to 70, when it was bringing in, it was up to 75,000 on that. And since there's not going to be any more money going into that fund, I mean, once you had the 22 million, you could only go down. It was never going to go up other than the interest. I don't anticipate that interest, a monthly interest coming in, Mayor, you disagree, is going up any significant. No, in other words, ARP is completed. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Alford, please.
Yes, 2nd District's doing well. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Hughes?
Mr. Chairman, the Joint City County Fire Committee met last week and voted to explore automatic response tones out for the fire. If you can remember, this is something the mayor brought up where, to give a good example, you can have a paid county fire department with inside the city and have a house on the back side of that property catch on fire, and the county would never be toned out or even know the fire was occurring. We appointed a subcommittee to put together an agreement to be considered at our next meeting on March 6th at noon in the city council room at the municipal building. And that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Beatty, please.
I have nothing to report.
We'll now move along to the agenda items. Agenda item A, Commissioner Rogers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution to rezone from FAR, Forestry, Agricultural, and Residential District, to R2, High Density Residential District, property located at 230 Burris Lane and identified by tax map 020, parcel 010.07. You can see this on pages 3 and 4. I asked Mr. Chairman to place this on next week's voting session. Bentley could not be here today, but he did say that he would be here next week to answer any questions that you guys might have, along with, he said that you could reach out to him this week.
What was the vote on the planning commission?
I believe it was unanimous, but maybe there was one not, but it was recommended approval from the planning commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, my R2 is, that's high density, right?
Yes. Duplexes.
And when this is in the county. Otherwise, we wouldn't be.
This is on Burris Lane, yeah.
Yeah, so otherwise, we wouldn't be, city would be doing the.
Yeah, it's from an FAR, forestry agriculture, to R2 high density. I did see.
That's fine.
They
I'll
left.
get
Probably
with Bentley, but
took too long.
high density usually means sewer, and we don't have sewer in the county. That's what I was getting at. So I'll get with Bentley.
Also, the duplex having duplexes on there as well, but it's over off of Burris Lane and Big Oak Trail. I believe in District 2.
It's on Frontage Road on the left, past Tupper Gap Road.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's it.
Commission will now go to agenda item B. Commissioner Louis Alford.
Thank you, sir. Request to award Captain John Collins his service weapon upon retirement on January 15th, 26th. Yeah, you see it on page 5. I recommend we move on with that, put it on resolution, pass.
Thank you. Now we'll move along to communications from the audience. I will recognize and allow up to 5 minutes for anyone wishing to speak. Speakers must identify themselves for the record and address their concerns to the commission as a whole. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Anyone like to speak? All right. We are adjourned.
Sir. Is it yours? Look at. Did tell the actual. I ain't get it. That's like what you're talking about. Oh, you thought I had it? That's yours. What happened? Right over. But no, I just get the
Sure, what I said.
I was looking for it, and I said,
yeah, see there.
So we get close. Yeah, he ain't gonna care. I tell him it wouldn't be ready. But yeah, he ain't gonna care as long as I know him and have it ready to go. But the date I got now, I'm going. I'm thinking, yeah, I'll get with you closer.
I'll see.
Okay.
well, I'd take care of it 90%. Bad thing. I help my doctor, all tell me, heart doctor.
How many years, buddy? Yeah.
All that